think I always believed it, to be honest. I think that's why I stuck through the hard years, was because I really believed in what I was doing.
Today's guest is Justin Snyder, the bold founder behind Forest Superfoods, a rapidly growing leader in the health supplement space based in Australia. With a journey that started from humble beginnings in a spare bedroom, Justin has scaled his company to 8 figures, building a loyal customer base by focusing on purity, quality, and authenticity in natural supplements. In this episode, we dive into Justin's entrepreneurial roots, the pivotal aha moment that led him into the superfoods industry, and those gritty early days when he juggled side hustles just to pay the rent. You'll hear Justin's hard-earned insights on scaling a business, the power of perseverance, taking risks, and what truly sets Forest Superfoods apart from the competition. Whether you're a founder, a marketer, or someone passionate about wellness, this conversation is packed with honest stories and actionable advice you don't want to miss. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. All right, Justin Snyder, welcome to Beyond Fulfillment.
Thanks for having me on, Dave.
We appreciate you taking the time to be here, Justin. So you are the founder of Forest Superfoods from Australia, and you've got quite an amazing story of your company, how it started, your incredible growth over the past decade or so, and then really what you're doing now. So certainly want to get into all that, but let's start from the beginning here, Justin. Can you just tell us what was the aha moment where you realized you wanted to start this company and that was something you had to do?
So I was always interested in entrepreneurship and running my own business. And I learned from my dad and my grandfather that if you ever want to get paid what you're worth, run your own business. Because if you're not worth very much, you won't make very much. And if you don't, if you're willing to work hard and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in, and sacrifice a lot, you could make a lot of money. So I was always kind of like, business was always the direction I was going to go in. And straight out of high school, I started this business called Happy Cow, which does like high-end leather fatty packs, like handmade, beautiful fatty packs, but it's like a high end. So it's like a very niche market. And I've still got that business, but there was never really like huge demand for it. And I was always on the lookout for something that a business I could start for which I felt like there was going to be a huge amount of demand and I could really grow it to, 8 figures and beyond. And when I was traveling around India when straight after high school, so it was maybe 18 or 19 or 20, I came across spirulina and some other supplements like that, like moringa powder and ashwagandha. And they're just plants. So the moringa is like a leaf, a moringa leaf, and ashwagandha root. And the spirulina is like an algae which grows on the surface of the water. And these plants and algae and different natural materials have really high amounts of certain active compounds and nutrients you don't find in everyday foods. And so like the spirulina, for example, super high in beta carotene, which is really good for your eyes, really high in iron and protein and flavonoids and a whole lot of other different incredible nutrients the human body needs. And I became really fascinated from that point on with this idea that we could improve our health and improve our lives and our well-being and everything through the foods that we consume. And at the time, it seems really obvious now, but at the time it seemed like a really out there kind of idea that like what you put in your body is going to affect how healthy your body is. But like now that seems really obvious. Like, of course, what you consume is going to impact how your body runs in the same way that, if you put Coca-Cola into your car, you're going to have trouble with your car running because it needs petrol, it needs diesel or whatever it is. So I became really fascinated from there and I spent a couple of years kind of researching and learning about all these incredible foods from all over the world. And then about 12 years ago, I started Forest Superfoods, and I called it Cheap Superfoods initially. But I just started it from my spare bedroom. And because I had that other small business on the side, that gave me a little bit of an income for the first 4 or 5 years when we just didn't make any money.
Okay. Wow. So you're traveling around in your early 20s. You discover these superfoods such as spirulina. You become fascinated with that industry and basically how what you consume can improve your health. You research a lot over the coming years. You've always had this natural inclination towards entrepreneurship. You had the small side business with the fanny packs. And then you decide that you're going to start this superfoods company from your spare bedroom 12 years ago. And granted, you had the side business, but it was making fanny packs, right? So you really didn't have any experience selling supplements and starting a superfoods company. So when you had that decision that, okay, I'm doing this, like how did you get it started?
Very slowly. I had, I didn't have resources to be able to hire anybody to help me. I did it with a friend of mine at the time. We went in partners 50-50, and he had a background in graphic design and marketing, that kind of thing. And I came from the accounting, business development side of things. And so it kind of worked reasonably well between us for the first couple of years. And then I ended up buying him out about 5 years ago or so. But we started just in a spare bedroom in an apartment. We got all of the right permits and things we need from the council, so we'd be able to pack the products in the kitchen at the apartment, and we would just buy small amounts as orders came in and put them into our branded packaging and send them out. And it was just kind of like a very slow process initially. And I think one of the things that really helped me, and I think it still helps me today. And when people talk to me about, what's the most important thing about running a business, I think it's this. I think the most important thing is being able to look through all of the crap that you have to deal with and just think about what's the one thing I could do today to grow my business another 1%. That's all. Like there's so many different things and so many different hats you have to wear as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, and you've got to deal with staff, and you've got to deal with accounting and marketing and taxes and logistics and all the kind of different things. But really, the most important thing out of all of those is getting sales. Because if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. And if you have sales, you can make everything else work. And so, like, the sales side of it is the most important thing, and being able to ascertain, okay, what's the next step I need to take? Okay, I need to start doing emails to my customers at twice a week. I need to start doing Facebook marketing. I need to improve my packaging, because when it arrives at the customer's house, it doesn't give the right kind of feeling and experience that I want the customers to have, or whatever it is, whatever that next logical step is to grow your business, to take that next baby step forward. That's a really important skill for people to develop. And it only comes, I think, from self-discipline, and from doing it for a very long time. And it's really easy to get caught up, like I said before, because I come from an accounting background, I always thought the profitability was the most important thing. I was always about like spreadsheets and checking the numbers and doing all the conversions and making sure we're profitable. But even profitability is not as important as making sales. Because if you make sales and you're not profitable, you can find a way to be profitable, like we saw with Facebook, or we saw with Uber, or any of these kind of unicorn companies that for 10 years made no money, but they had the sales. And so it's the marketing side of thing that I think is the most important thing. And I think if you're a business owner and you don't like marketing, you have to change that mentality, because I think the marketing is so essential to growing your business.
Wow. Yeah, such great insights there. So many things to unpack. And I love that, where if you don't have sales, you don't have a business. And I mean, just looking at your journey, because as we talked earlier, right, you're gonna do 8 figures this year. And starting this 12 years ago in an apartment in a spare bedroom, packing boxes and just a handful of sales. I mean, if someone would have told you 12 years later that you would have scaled to this point, I mean, how difficult would that have been to believe in the beginning when you were in those early days?
I think I always believed it, to be honest. I think that's why I stuck through the hard years, was because I really believed in what I was doing. And I really maybe I didn't believe it in terms of I never really took that much time to think about how far can this thing really go. I knew it was scalable because it's an online business, because we've got really good contractual agreements with the farmers we work with. So we've got, plenty of supply. I knew there was it ticked all the boxes in terms of being a business that could grow exponentially and, and become a really big business. But I was more kind of motivated to get through the hard times because I would hear from customers, and still do on a daily basis, about how the products have changed their lives. And I think there's so many, the real tragedy in life is like spending your waking hours doing a job or running a business that you don't enjoy. I think that's a massive tragedy, because it's the time that's the only thing that's really valuable. The money is numbers on a screen these days. It's not something tangible, whereas your time that you have left on this planet is finite. And so I think it's really important to spend your time doing something that you believe in. And it was, I remember those difficult weeks when I could barely pay myself $100 a week to buy groceries and pay rent, but I kept going with it. Maybe because I'm quite stubborn, but also because I got these emails from customers talking about how much these products have changed their lives, and thank you for providing them, and thank you for doing these really high quality supplements they can't find anywhere else. And that was enough motivation for me to keep going, and also a really good signal that you're onto something. If you've got raving fans for your business, you're onto something, that you've got something special there. And that just kind of that kept me going through the hard times. But I never really, I wasn't sure how far I could go. And I feel like we're just getting started in a funny kind of way. Like, I feel like, if I would have looked back 10 years, if I would have looked back 2 years ago and seen where we were today, I would have been like, that's incredible. But like, I think every time you reach a new milestone, you kind of go, well, what's the next milestone? Because even though I think, even though we're making enough money that I'm comfortable, and the bills are paid, and and we've got enough money to be able to grow and all that kind of stuff. I think business is kind of like human, is kind of like life as well. Nothing stays still. Everything's changing all the time, in life, in the human body, in business, in nature, in everything. And so I think if you're not growing your business is shrinking. Because even if your business isn't technically shrinking, you've got competitors that are growing. So then you are shrinking relative to your competitors. And so I think it's really important to always be like continuing to grow and continuing to expand your business and continuing to improve and move forward, because the alternative to that is going backwards. There's no like staying the way it is now. So I try to take this mindset of like, we're just getting started. And I think in a lot of ways we are. I think 10 years from now, I think, I think we'll probably be 10 times bigger than we are now.
Love that. And let me just ask you, because you referenced those early years several times here and how difficult it was, to where the business isn't making money and the growth is slow and you're having trouble buying groceries. And I can only imagine too, right, from like friends, family, whoever else, maybe people that love you and want to see you win, but they might be looking at you like Justin, man, you okay? Is this gonna work? Like, what was the mindset like during those days in terms of how difficult it was to keep going?
I mean, I never really thought about giving up. I don't know why. Like, looking back now, that would have been a rational thought to go like, maybe I should be doing something else. Maybe I should go and get a job, or, try a different business or whatever. But I think I just had so much belief in the business concept and this idea that like people could change their health through the food they eat. I just thought that was such a powerful idea. And I think in modern day life, so many of us have had experiences with pharmaceuticals where we've kind of been a bit, discouraged by the results we've had, or the complications that have come from pharmaceuticals, or, so many people are struggling to get enough nutrients because a lot of the foods we eat are devoid of nutrients. That I just felt it's going to be a massive industry. This idea of like improving your health through food and through supplementation. I just knew it was always going to be this massive thing. And so I just kind of had blinkers on and just kept going and just kept putting one step in front of the other. And I think as long as you can see just a little bit of improvement and a little bit of like forward motion, I think that's often enough to keep you motivated to keep going. So like, if we were doing $500 a week in sales, just being able to get that from $500 a week in sales to $700 a week in sales, it's a really big jump. It's still like not enough to pay the bills, but it's a big improvement from where we were the week before. And so I think, I think rather than think about like, I'm not at this magical amount of profit a year that I want to get to. Think rather, am I improving, and have I taken one step? Have I put one step in front of the other? And have I improved compared to last week or last month or last year? And I think it's the same for human beings as well. Like I think a lot of times we're so hard on ourselves, and we're so like, we talk down to ourselves. But I think if we just kind of looked at ourselves and looked at how far we've come as a human being from where we were a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, there's a lot to be proud of, because there's been a lot of growth in that period. And we might not be perfect, but if we're improving, and we're growing as human beings, and we're growing our business, and I think, that's all that matters. It's like, it's the direction you go in. It's not about getting to some imaginary milestone or some imaginary goal. It's about what direction are you moving in terms of your health, in terms of your business, in terms of your relationships, in terms of your self-respect, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's, all these things are like a constant process of improvement. And as long as you're moving forward, you're going to get there eventually.
So it sounds like you're saying too that the continually making progress and taking action towards your North Star, so to speak, right, can provide the fuel to continue to persevere through all the tough times that are going to be there.
Yeah, well,
Right?
like, if you improve a little bit every day, by the end of the year, you've got 365 little improvements all stacked on top of each other. And so, like, I think that should be the goal, is to just like improve a little bit every day, like do one thing every day to grow your business, and think about, what is that thing I need to do today? What's that one thing I could do today that's going to grow my business more than any other action I could take, and do that action every single day. And then after 1 year, after 10 years, you've grown massively. It's that whole thing of like, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, like, and one step, and one step, and one step, and one step. And if you could train your brain to just be consistent in terms of taking those steps, you can't not get to where you're trying to get to.
Okay. And so was there like a specific inflection point along the way where things really started to take off and you kind of got out of that rut and you saw that upward trajectory?
I mean, it's been very gradual. I think so. When I started the business with the business partner, we had very different ideas. I remember him turning to me one day, and we were about 3 years in. He turned to me one day and he goes, "Oh, this business might actually go somewhere." And I was like, "I know, that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm working." But he never really had that same belief in the business and where it could go as what I did. He didn't share my vision. And so it got to a stage where I felt like I was doing all of the work and he wasn't really contributing very much. And so I was like, well, I have to pay him, whatever little profit there is, I have to split with him, but I feel like I'm doing all the work. And so I kind of got a bit discouraged for a month or two. And he came to me and said, "If you want to buy me out, you can." And I bought him out that day. And that's when the business really changed, because I went, okay, now it's all on me. Now I've got the opportunity to do something massive with this business. And I taught myself, the Facebook ad stuff and the Google ads, and I redid the website, and I really thought about the copywriting, and I really thought about who our customer base was and how can I appeal to those people. And, I just went in 100%, and it just grew really quickly. And I think COVID really helped us because people were at home a lot. And so they were just like, everyone was shopping online. The percentage of retail sales, which were e-commerce, just shot up like massively during the COVID period, particularly in Australia where there's a lot of lockdowns and stuff. And so that really helped to spur on growth and get new customers. And because the nature of the products, they have a really good lifetime customer value, because someone comes and buys, someone's, has issues with stress and anxiety, and they try ashwagandha, and it naturally reduces their cortisol levels and makes them feel more calm. They go back and buy that again and again. And so we've got customers who are on their 97th order, their 105th order, their 150th order. So it's that kind of business that people come and buy again and again and again. So like, I really focused during that COVID period, and even still today, about really focus on new customer acquisition, because I know that once I get people in and they try the products, they come back and buy again and again and again. And so I think changing my mentality from like, making sales to acquiring new customers really made a difference, because I could go back and look at all of our Facebook marketing, for example, and see that we're spending huge amounts of money, but we were targeting people who had already purchased from us. And so that means we were paying these huge CPAs to Facebook to get people to rebuy when they probably would have rebought anyway based off the back of an email. And so I changed all of that to be really focused on the new customer acquisition. And yeah, it's just been, it's been growing really well since. And like I always say, the hardest business is the business that's doing less than $1 million, because you're doing everything yourself. Or less than a couple of $100,000, because you have to do everything yourself. And it's really tricky wearing a lot of hats as a business owner. And so once you start getting, beyond that $1 million a year, you can start to bring in key people who can really start to take the pressure off you, particularly in terms of the day-to-day operations. So like having someone else who can answer the customer emails, and someone else who can pack the orders, and someone else who can do the logistics, and someone else who can, do the manufacturing and the accounting and all that kind of stuff. Because I think as a business owner and as the founder, it's really important to be focused on new customer acquisition and growth. And the more people I can kind of bring in to handle the day-to-day operation of the business, the more I can focus on that stuff, which is, again, the stuff that grows the business.
Okay. Yeah, excellent insights there. And another key theme that I notice in everything you're saying is you seem to have this bias for action, and you're very apt to try things, not afraid to fail, and then of course learn from your mistakes and use that to take the next action. So does that sound right?
Yeah, and my CEO would say I'm too much like that. Like I'm too impulsive, and I'm too much about like, just let's try this. This sounds interesting. Let's try this. Let's try that. But I've always thought that like you need to try 100 things to find one thing that works. And you don't find that one thing that works without trying the other 99 things that fail. And so I think, and like Amazon and does that same kind of thing, or Google, they invest all this money in all these different projects, and most of them don't go anywhere. But in order to find the Google Maps, project, or some other massive project that Google does, which has been super successful, they need to do all these other projects that all turn out to be pretty crappy and don't make any money. And so I'm not, I don't mind taking risks, but they're always calculated risks. And I need to, if I could justify it, and I can go, well, I know, there's a lot of our customer base on X, for example, let's try out X ads. And I think that's a calculated risk. And it's not like we're going to be, risking the business's survival in order to do it. We're going to allocate a couple of grand and give it a go and see what kind of return we get. But I think one of the beauties of online business is that you have the ability to be tracked, to be able to track things and be able to see what kind of returns you're getting from different investments and how many clicks you're getting. And, the people that came through these particular Facebook ads, how many orders did they place, from after that first order? And there's so much data that's available to you as a business owner for an e-commerce business that you can take some really calculated risks. And as long as you've got data that's reliable, it's really easy to scale the things that work.
Okay. And real quick, right? Being that you've had such incredible growth, particularly over the last couple of years, and now you're expanding into all these new markets, just talk to us real quick about what makes Forest Superfoods different from other supplement companies.
So we do the opposite to what what all the other supplements companies do, and that might be, part of a lot. That might be all of the reason why I've been so successful. And I think, for businesses, it's really important to think about what are you doing differently to your competitors, and make sure you communicate that loud and clear, because it can't just be about price. You can't just sell the same product as everybody else and just charge slightly less, because they're going to see that you're charging slightly less, and they're going to charge slightly less. And then you've got to reduce your price, and they reduce your price. And all of a sudden, no one's making any money. You have to be able to find a way to distinguish yourself from your competitors. It's not just about having the cheaper price. And so I took a risk and decided that I wanted to sell supplements that I wanted to take. So like most of the supplements in Australia and the US have up to 90% fillers in them. So an ashwagandha supplement, we'll call it ashwagandha, but it'll be 90% fillers and binders, 10% ashwagandha. And then they'll say, this is our ashwagandha extract. So basically they just take the ashwagandha root and add all this alcohol and water to it, and then sell the the liquid and throw away the actual root. So they lose a whole lot of the active compounds, and they'll buy cheap imports to use the ingredients in their blends in their product. And so I just didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to sell supplements that I wanted to take myself because they were really high quality and safe to consume, and because they worked. And so from day one, our supplements have always been no fillers, no extracts, no cheap imports, no flavors, no fillers, no crap in it. Just like as close to how it appears in nature as possible. So like our moringa leaf or our ashwagandha root or whatever they are, it's just pure ashwagandha or pure moringa, and it's been freeze dried, because even though it's freeze drying is 10 times more expensive than any other drying method, it retains a lot of the nutrients that are lost during other drying, when you use other drying processes. So like we don't look at the price. So in Australia, for example, we're one of the main leaders in the supplement space, but we charge double what anybody else charges. And we've been able to grow, and when we're so much more expensive than else, because it's about value rather than price. And it took me a very long time. I was in business from when I was 13. I was working with my grandfather in his business. But from 13 to like 28, it didn't click until I started for Superfoods. And it didn't click, this idea that like people tell you they want a cheap price, but they don't want a cheap price. They want the best. They want the best value. And sometimes the best value means paying a little bit extra. And so the reason why Forest Foods works so well is because the value is there for people, because our supplements work in a way that the cheaper knockoffs that they buy from the pharmacy or supermarket or from other online sellers don't work. And so because it works, it's worth it if people spend an extra $20 a month or $30 a month, because they actually get benefits from it. And so we've been able to distinguish ourselves from competitors in the market by doing the highest quality possible, and that's what we've become known for and what we have a reputation for.
Love that. All right. And Justin, if people want to reach out to you, get in touch, learn more about your company, what's the best way people can find you online?
They can go to forestsuperfoods.com. We sell from our warehouse in Australia direct to the US. It's 120 US for free shipping. And we sell all over the world. They can also visit us on YouTube, Forest Superfoods, or on Instagram or Facebook, Forest Superfoods. And if they want to get in touch with me directly, I'm Justin A.H. Snyder on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. We'll link all that in the show notes for everyone. All right. Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and sharing these incredible stories from your journey and all the valuable wisdom that you've learned along the way with our listeners. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Dave.